Hi everyone, my name is Matt Carbajal, and the title of my capstone is The High School Athletic Director's Responsibilities and Identifying Effective Coping Mechanisms. The course was PE 589, Physical Education and Exercise Science Capstone, and the instructor was Dr. Cindy Tanis. So, going to slide 2, some of the introductory statements. Uh, Stress management is a critical topic for sport organizations given the increasing management pressures stemming from economics, external media, parental pressures, and athletic scrutiny by many different groups. That's by Judge and Judge 2009. There's stress everywhere, and so burnout it stems from many different things, as we'll cover, but it's not obviously just in athletic administration. Bullet 2. In any workplace, stressful environments promote turnover, burnout, ineffectiveness, and health issues. In comparison, proper management of stress at work equates to quality of living and productivity. The purpose of this study was to explore the high school athletic director's responsibility. And an additional purpose was to identify coping mechanisms to give the administrator a greater chance to thrive. There were 3 central research questions, and the first one was, what are the responsibilities of the high school athletic director? What are the athletic director's perception of burnout? And the third one, what coping mechanisms does the athletic director use to manage burnout? Now going to slide 3, values, faith, and beliefs integration. As I was thinking about, even before I entered this class or this program at APU, I was kind of in a just thought of where I want to go. Do I want, because my undergrad degree is in biblical studies, I was thinking about pursuing seminary or just pursuing seminary and continuing my biblical education. But then I was hired as an athletic director and PE teacher here in Fullerton, California, and I loved PE. I loved being an athletic director, and so I began to ask myself, well, obviously I can glorify Jesus in Bible, and if I teach Bible and go to seminary, but how can I seek to glorify God and honor Him in athletics? And my favorite basketball coach is at the University of Virginia, Tony Bennett, and he's a Christian man. I've heard many interviews from him, and so I shot him an email. I believe it was the beginning of 2014, and I asked him just how do you seek to glorify God in basketball or in sports in athletics, and he gave me 5 pillars in particular, and these pillars are passion. Don't be lukewarm. Be hot or cold. Be all in. You know, as in Revelation, it talks about being lukewarm. Humility. Okay, Jesus is the perfect example of humility. Servanthood. Okay, make others around you better. Thankfulness. Paul urges us to be thankful in all things. And unity. It says in Mark that a house divided will not stand. And so in athletics and in team sports, we have to come together. So as I was thinking about topics, this was definitely something that I felt would be applicable to my research topic. Okay, next slide. So now we get into the literature review. The first one I have is how to measure coach burnout. An evaluation of 3 burnout measures by Gustafson, Hassman, and Lundqvist, 2014. The purpose of the study was to identify coaches' burnout and compare using 3 measuring tools: the procedure, participants, and the method. There were 277 participants. 236 of those were male and 39 were female. And something that I'll talk about later in this presentation is that there wasn't much of a balance as far as male to female ratio. It was either heavily male or heavily female, which is I think a weakness in these studies. And then for the coaches, They ranged from 20 to 82 years old. Some of the results were, or sources that were used were the MBI, the Maslow Burnout Inventory. This is something that was used all throughout almost every source. The MBI was used because of burnout. And it was revealed in one of the articles that this is one of the most accurate tools to measuring burnout. Emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and lack of personal accomplishment. Those were 3 points that continually came up as I studied burnout, especially depersonalization. As coaches or athletic directors, educators go through burnout, they start to just feel depersonalized, less of a human, and question why they're doing what they're doing, which leads to burnout or emotional exhaustion. So the application to this study, there's a great correlation between coaches burnout and athletic director burnout, and I think to push back on that a little bit, there's a relationship between the coach and the athletic director. They both work with athletes. They both play a big role in the athletic program, and that they have similar roles. So that's how this applies to this study. Okay, a model of stress and burnout in male high school athletic directors, this one in particular for male ADs, from Eklund, Kelly, and Martin. So the purpose of this study was to observe stress and burnout amongst high school ADs. Procedure, participants, and the method. There were 294 male athletic directors that were recruited for this study, and they ranged from 22 to 65 years old. Again, the MBI was used in this study. There was also a demographic questionnaire, which also asked percentage of time spent in AD role, and I think that's important because if we're going to measure burnout, it's important to see how much they're actually doing things that pertain to athletics, because oftentimes, I mean, first, the task list for the AD is so robust, but sometimes athletic directors or teachers, administrators, they might not be doing something during their 8-hour shift or whatever it may be. They might not be doing something explicitly to their role. So that was something that was asked in this study. The results were, again, emotional fatigue and depersonalization, and a lack of personal achievement. And so this has a direct relationship to my study because it has to do with male athletic directors. Although my study was not solely for male ADs, but male and female. Okay, so the last one was the last literature review was actually a dissertation, and it has to do with high school principal burnout. So the title was High School Principal Burnout, a study relating perceived levels of professional burnout to principals' reliance on social basis of power. So the purpose of this study was to describe severity of burnout for high school principals. An additional purpose was to determine if a relationship exists between those who rely on personal power and those who rely on positional power with regard to burnout. The procedure, participants, and method. There were 98 participants. All were high school principals. Again, the MBI was used for this study. And then the methodology used in this study were descriptive, correlational, and ex post facto research used to investigate burnout. The study examined characteristics of burnout in principals by measuring levels of emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and decreased personal accomplishment. All three of those things were 3 key points that we discussed in the previous literature that I found. And then the results of this study were high levels of emotional exhaustion. More than 39% used their personal power, while positional power was relied upon for 61%, who relied on personal power, tended to experience less emotional exhaustion. So the application to this study is that the principal has a similar role to the athletic director. First, as we'll see, and that I found in my results, is everything is relayed from the athletic director to the supervisor, to the principal. And so principals, in a sense, have a bit of a hand in the athletic program. They're both administrators, they're both educators, and they both can experience burnout. And particularly here, personal power and positional power, that can be two key points for the athletic director. Okay, there can be personal power that the AD feels, which can lead to burnout, and then positional power as the head athletic director of a school. Okay, so the methodology that I used in particular was, first of all, it was a mixed method. So I used both qualitative and quantitative. There was a Likert scale, which had 5 Likert scale statements, and then there were 3 open-ended questions that I asked. There were 12 athletic directors that I interviewed throughout Southern California. They're all high school athletic directors. And then there were both male and female. I didn't want to limit myself to just male or female. I wanted to try to have somewhat of a balance. And then they ranged from ages 30 to 55 years of age. So some of the results that I found, in light of the first research question, what are the responsibilities of the high school athletic director? I found that there was a robust task list. There was one athletic director literally said it's like a never-ending checklist for the athletic director. You come into the day with 10 things to do, and it's like you leave with 12 things to do. It's the never-ending task list. And so I was always thinking about what is a job description for an athletic director, but there really isn't one, because there's so many hats that they have to wear, in a sense, that you can't limit yourself to just one set of tasks that the AD does. And then another result that I found was they maintain close relationships with coaches and supervisors. Now, in light of the second research question, what are the athletic director's perception of burnout? The first thing is that it's very important for them to be aware of it. Being aware of anything is the first key almost to avoiding it, and that was one of my questions on the Likert scale was, being aware of burnout in administration is the first key to avoiding it, and many agreed to it. The second one was that athletic directors are far more vulnerable than the coach, far more vulnerable to burnout than the coach, and that's because I think just because they have more hats, they have much more responsibilities. The third research question, in light of the results, what coping mechanism does the athletic directors use to manage burnout? And there were 3 consistent ones that continued to come up, and that was quality family time, even if one was not married, because there was one participant who was a single father and had a few kids. He mentioned that serving his kids and spending time with them was a great coping mechanism for him. Second one was exercise. I think every participant suggested exercising and having some type of plan to get out and be active. And then the third one was that as athletic directors, we must continually remind ourselves that it's just a job. It can't rule our lives. So discussion. In light of the first research question, the AD's responsibilities, we're going to take a look at the similarities and draw some distinctions between the literature and the results. So in light of Branch and Case 2003 from the Literature Review, one of the literature sources that I used, they illustrate that there is a list of 32 responsibilities within the athletic director's job description. Now, in relationship to my results from this analysis demonstrate that there is a never-ending task list, as one of the ADs said, and it's almost impossible for them to get everything done in their time being in the office from 7:30 to 3:30. Now, in light of the second research question in perception of burnout, Betty, Candace, and Jeffrey in 1999 illustrate that stress was directly associated to burnout subscales of emotional exhaustion, personal accomplishment, and depersonalization. That was something that I continually found in numerous sources. And then in my results, in light of my results, the results show that not being able to foresee problems in the future or not getting the right coaches to adequately do the job can be extremely frustrating. And I think for one to not be able to foresee problems in the future kind of leads to a lack of personal accomplishment, because it's almost like, why can't I foresee these things coming up? So there's definitely a correlation between those two, the literature review and my results. Lastly, the third research question deals with coping mechanisms. Results allude to exercising and quality time with family. Those were the results that I got. And then quality family time is not only enjoyable, says Coyne Masterson, but commonly considered therapeutic. Family time isn't just a coping mechanism that could be used for athletic directors, but it can be used all across the board. So now, one of the distinctions that was drawn that was not in the literature, but that I found from my results, was prayer. Prayer was discussed a lot, and so I think that's an interesting thing to take away, because I think prayer or meditation can be used to relax. It can be used to relax. It can bring peace and comfort, things like that. So recommendations, implications, and future research. So some recommendations I have. Research done outside of America to see correlation between stress management and see the consistencies. I think if we limit ourselves, and I think a lot of the burnout research for this field has been done solely in America, and that does limit us, because we have resources and tools that, other countries may not have, other parts of the world may not have. So to see research done in other countries would be good, and to get the correlation between the two, and to see if there are consistencies. And then definitely something I mentioned earlier, but a balance between male and female participants. In almost all the literature reviews I did, except for one, specifically on female athletic directors, it was heavily male. And so I think if there's more of a balance, I think that'd be a great way to keep things consistent, and have more of a balance, and get better results, more accurate results. And then drawing a distinction between burnout perceptions amongst ADs, coaches, and educators. While they all do have a similar role, I think going in depth for one particular title would be a great way to flush out some of this stuff. And then the implications. The implications are like I just said, the correlation between coach, AD, and educator. I think that this research is definitely applicable to all, especially which is shown in the literature review. The coach, AD, and educator, they all have similar roles. The AD is an educator. Although the educator is not necessarily an athletic director, the AD is an educator. He or she has to educate his athletic staff, the program, the student athletes, and so he or she plays a big role in the program and the school as a whole. And then prayer, something I found that was interesting. 11 out of 12 of my participants suggest prayer, and most did not identify themselves as Christian. And so I think what that shows us is that all of us, if not most, as shown in the results, can use prayer and meditation or religious practices in the field for relaxation, which brings peace and comfort. And then for future research, I think identifying more coping mechanisms and how they are used in different settings would be a great idea, because there's a lot of coping mechanisms that can be used in a variety of settings, like exercise or spending quality family time. So I think going in depth with coping mechanisms, getting a list, and seeing things that are distinct to one particular field. And then I think if I were to ask myself, how would that compare to this given research topic? Because I think mine was more broad because of the coping mechanisms that were given, but I think it would be great to go more in depth for future research, to focus on some of the coping mechanisms that can be distinctly used for certain subjects. All right, so that is my presentation for my capstone. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to hearing your guys' thoughts. Thank you so much, and have a good evening.